So we start in season 1 and this bottom 10 is already looking wildly different to normal. Verstappen, Hamilton and Leclerc in the bottom 10? I think I should clarify this now, but I'm counting 10th place as a win in these graphics and 9th and 8th as podiums, and so that means that Hulkenberg has finally got that first podium and 2 10th place finishes for Sauber. Moving into the top 9, we have Norris in 9th, Tsunoda in the usual position of 8th for Red Bull and Ocon in 7th for Haas. 5th and 6th being the Mercedes cars isn't all too unusual, but it's the top 4 where things really spice up. In 4th, we have Albon in the Williams with 2 wins and 10 podiums, but then just ahead of him in 3rd is Piastri in the McLaren. This is when you know they've fucked up the performance of the cars, because there is no way Piastri should be that high. I mean, the goal of this point system is to finish in the points every race and finish as close to 10th as possible, and so clearly Piastri did that if he can come 3rd with just 1 win and 3 podiums. But he wasn't close to the top 2, which features the 2 Spaniards on the grid, Alonso and Sainz. They traded 10ths across the season, but it was a crucial final race in Abu Dhabi that saw Sainz in 10th and Alonso in 11th, thereby securing the title for the Williams driver. Sainz did get a few more podiums across the year, and that ultimately kept him ahead of Alonso, who got more 10ths. In the constructors, Williams are on top as the mid-team to rule all mid-teams, and somehow, despite all of the points changes, McLaren are in 2nd. Mercedes are also quite high considering how good they can get in these sims, and Aston are in 4th. Unfortunately, not every team scored points, but only 2 didn't get triple digits, so it'll be interesting to see how that changes after looking at the moves. Season 2 has a slightly changed bottom 10, with Ocon dropping from 7th to 13th and 7 drivers not scoring any points. This means all of the points are in the top 10, and wow, I've never seen so many 100s this low down. The wins, apart from Ocon, all came in the top 6, and we can see Gasly doing decent for McLaren and Stroll actually scoring well for once with 5 wins. Antonelli did well to finish in 4th despite not getting a win, and in the top 3, we had a 3-way fight for the title between Alonso, Lawson and Albon. Fernando started the season well, picking up 2 wins and 5 more podiums in the first 10 races, all while coming in the top 10 every race. In the same period, Lawson only scored 4 times. But when Alonso began to falter, Lawson went on a generational run, starting his point scoring with a 6th in Monaco and then getting 4 straight 10ths, another 3 9ths and then 1 more 10th before coming 14th in the Netherlands. From here on out, he scored well to the end of the season, but in the background, Albon had been cooking. He had got his fair share of 11ths, but ultimately he didn't come higher than 7th all year while not scoring points 9 times. This ensured that he won out in this incredibly close title fight by the small margin of 2 points to teammate Lawson. Alonso had put in a good effort, and the same can be said about Lawson, but ultimately Albon finished low in the points all year and won out because of it. Williams obviously stay on top in the constructors, but Aston are getting closer with Mercedes closing out the top 3. Into the moves. Season 3, and we're back to spread out points at the back of the grid. Sauber have fallen to the back of the grid, where even VCARB scored 3 wins between their drivers. Alpine scored decent points but would finish just 1 point behind Haas to come 8th. And into the top 10, Stroll has fallen down the order, with the Red Bull and McLaren's also falling off because of the point system. Lawson goes from a title challenge to no wins in 5th. Piastri stays high up in the order despite joining another top team, and we once again have a 3-way title fight. It was once again involving Albon, but now with new challenges in Antonelli and Tsunoda. Yuki started the year off pretty shaky and either scored good points in the real championship or DNF'd, meaning that he barely got any points in our format. But after round 10 in Canada, he went on another generational run where he got 2 10ths, 4 9ths, 2 8ths, and consistent points for the next 14 races. Now let's see if this was enough to win the title. Albon would score points from round 1 in Australia all the way to round 15 in Belgium, but he did pick up quite a few 6ths and 7ths. He would DNF in round 16 at Hungary and then proceed to not score points for another 3 races in the remaining 8. And finally, Antonelli. Kimi would suffer from not scoring in quite a few races, typically finishing 11th, and also had a few high finishes in 4th and 5th. This decided the title, as even though he got the most wins out of anyone in season 3, it would be Albon in 3rd, Antonelli in 2nd on identical points, and Tsunoda in 1st with just 3 wins but 12 podiums. A real good battle for who could be the most mid driver this year. Mercedes would knock Williams off the top, with Aston staying up there, and the order looks relatively normal other than that. Now it's time for the moves. Verstappen would call it quits in season 3, leading to Norris joining Ferrari and Russell to move to McLaren. After fighting with Tsunoda at Williams, Albon would join him as his teammate at Mercedes, with Bortoleto escaping Sauber and being replaced by Pepe Marti. Sainz would be dropped again, with Antonelli moving back to a top 4 team, and finally Colapinto would join Aston Martin, with Nikola Zolov joining the grid at Alpine. Definitely worth checking out the full results for this one. Into season 4 and the order has changed again at the back. Although Alpine are terrible and VCarb aren't much better, Stroll has fallen back into the bottom 10 and is even behind Marti in the Sauber. The McLarens are also finally where they should be, not challenging for the title like Piastri. The Williams are very low as well, as Bortoleto is 10th and Lawson is only 8th. Colapinto had a good year in 7th with 3 wins, and Antonelli and Piastri are way too high for how good their cars are. Into the top 4 we have last season's winner Tsunoda, with Albon beating him by 9 points this time around. This leaves us with Ocon and Behrman to fight it out for the title. In probably the most out of nowhere title win, Ollie Behrman would dominate, scoring 6 wins, 14 podiums and beating his teammate by 78 points. Like I said, I really have no idea where this came from. A 78 point gap from first to second in this points format is absolutely insane. Haas unsurprisingly walked the floor in the constructors with 588 points, and Mercedes could not even come close. There's another big gap to third, and from then on it's pretty close and normal, so let's move to the transfers. Hulkenberg kicks us off by retiring from the sport, which led Paul Aaron to go to Sauber, Solov to VCarb and Schramnit to Alpine. And finally, second place in the championship, Ocon would be dropped by Haas in favour of Zach O'Sullivan. And as always, here's the full results. Season 5 now, and VCarb are back down to 0 points. Stroll is straight trash in 16th place and Ocon's replacement finished in 12th. Into the top 10, the Ferrari scored solid points in 8th and 9th, Antonelli is where he probably should be in that Red Bull despite his 4 wins, and Colapinto has improved to a nice 5th place. In 4th, it's Behrman who stays high up in the championship after his title win, and in 3rd, it's Lawson for Williams. This time around, it was between Albon and Bortoleto. Alex scored points in almost every race he finished and only DNF'd twice, yet Bortoleto was only 16 points behind him. And to be honest, I don't know how it got so close in the top 2. You can see for yourself in the results page, but this one's confusing me. Anyways, to the constructors, and it's a bit closer this time around, but still, Williams take home yet another constructors trophy with Mercedes second once again. There's not too much else to talk about, so let's move on to the transfers. Yeah, so about that. The driver moves aren't known until the next season, and so I typically look after the first race of the following year for the different changes and then note them down. However, after the final race of season 5, it took me to this weird screen that I've never seen before. Thinking it was just frozen, I quickly grabbed a screenshot of the results and closed the game. And thank God I did that, because when I tried to load the save up again, my entire game would crash, which is what you're seeing right now. So there are no transfers for season 6, and there's also no season 6, so I've had to make a compromise. Instead of just going from the very start again, because I am not simming another 5 seasons, I'm instead going to do another save and just do 5 seasons of that, which obviously means the grid is going to change. Just a bit. Here's the grid for season 5. And here's the grid for season 2. It's annoying because the old save was starting to look really good with Bortoleto challenging in the Williams, Colapinto in the Aston, and Lawson also staying up there. But anyway, there's nothing we can do. Let's move on to the revamped season 6. Please EA, fix your game. So in our rebooted save, season 6 sees Hulkenberg returning to F1 for like the 5th time now, but he was in dead last as the Saubers have been effectively reset. Moving into the top 4, Stroll is back to delivering, kind of, and the Mercedes are a bit too high for my liking. Albon would be 4th with identical points to Piastri, and Russell was 3rd in a Ferrari. But we have another tasty title fight, this time between Gasly and Lawson. Liam would enjoy a very on-off start to the season where he'd either come 11th or 10th, and he wouldn't finish higher than 7th all year. This has the hallmarks of a great title challenge, but he was against midfield maestro Pierre Gasly. I mean, just imagine his 2021 season in this points format. Oh wait, I did a video for that too. Anyways, Gasly would fail to score points just 2 times, but also only got 1 10th place finish over the year. So how would it finish? Well, it was a semi-close fight, but the consistency from Gasly was what did it in the end. 1 win, but 17 podiums is insane, but unlucky to Lawson, who gets an insane 8 wins and 14 podiums, and yet is still 26 points behind the Gazman. Thanks to Stroll being not as high as he should be, Williams edge Aston in the constructors, taking home yet another crown, and the fights for 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th are very close. With all that said, let's move to the moves. We start at Red Bull, where Sainz would rejoin McLaren, Norris would head to Red Bull, Leclerc would join his old teammate at McLaren, and Tsunoda was headed to Ferrari. After losing Aston in the constructors, Stroll would be dropped and replaced by Antonelli, leading Albon to join Mercedes, and finally, after a few years out of the sport, Lewis Hamilton would join Williams. I guess Frank convinced Lewis after all. In Season 7, there's a lot more points than last year. Bortoleto actually scored a real podium and suffered because of it, as Sauber were only ahead of VCarb. Alpine and Haas shared another good fight that was separated by 1 point, and we can see the top teams all in the bottom 10 or lower top half. Albon wouldn't have the greatest of seasons for Mercedes, and Hamilton also disappointed as he was only 5th for Williams. Piastri was 4th for Mercedes, and it's very close between the top 3 once again. And it features Gasly, Lawson, and this time Antonelli. Although it is close, we can count Antonelli out because he finished outside of the points too many times despite his 4 10th places. So it's between Gasly and Lawson for the second year in a row. Gasly wouldn't score points in 8 races compared to his 2 last season, and although he was low in the points most times, let's see if Lawson could finally get that title. Lawson would have 3 wins and a further 2 podiums by the 8th round in Monaco. Then he'd have a rough spell mid-season but still found time for a win and 2 more podiums. However, he would finish too high on multiple occasions with a 5th, 2 4ths and even a 2nd place at Singapore. So this meant that by just 4 points, our winner for Season 7 would be Gasly once again. How unlucky is Lawson, man? Williams would lose the Constructors this year thanks to Hamilton not being quite on it, and Mercedes would once again occupy the 3rd spot. There's nothing too out of the ordinary elsewhere, so let's move to the moves. To start us off, Hülkenberg would retire for like the 5th time from the sport, and I think this time may well be the last. This led Jack Doohan to join Sauber, with Paul Aron going to Alpine and O'Sullivan joining VCarb. And finally, Tsunoda would do a seat swap with Antonelli to close out the transfers for Season 7. Now let's move on to Season 8. And Alpine are back down to earth and back fighting with the VCarbs for last place. The McLarens are where they should be in 14th and 15th, and Bortoleto outshone Doohan massively in his Sauber, as they look a bit better. Into the top 10, and clearly the Aston has improved because both Tsunoda and last season's winner Gasly aren't even in the top 4. But someone who is in the top 4 is Lawson, and he wouldn't challenge for the title this time around. But there were 2 others who wouldn't really challenge either, being Ocon in 3rd and Behrman in 2nd, as Alex Albon takes home his 3rd mid-championship title despite getting 1 less win and 2 less podiums than 2nd place Behrman. Because of the spread out points, the Constructors is very close, with Red Bull just taking the crown ahead of Williams, and Mercedes are 3rd once again. The fight for 4th was close, but Aston would win out thanks to their 2 mid-drivers. Oh yeah, and Sauber ahead of McLaren. Take your screenshots now. Now let's move to the transfers. Staying with Sauber, they would sack their leading driver Bortoleto for Pepe Marti to kick off the transfers. A truly criminal move. After getting another title, Albon would be on the move again, and he would join Ferrari, replacing Antonelli, who would move back to Mercedes. Elsewhere, Hamilton would call it quits for the 2nd time this video, as Ocon joined Williams, Leclerc went to Red Bull, Piastri rejoined McLaren, Tsunoda went back to Mercedes, and Behrman joined Aston Martin. Zach O'Sullivan would then go to Haas, with Jack Crawford completing the grid at VCarb. Let's see if Albon can truly prove he's the middest driver of all time and win the title in 3 different teams in Season 9. The points are incredibly spread out in this one, with 16th place Behrman being the last driver to have triple digit points. Everyone seemed to get a 10th place this season, and as we can see in 11th and 12th, the Saubers are improving. Into the top 10, Piastri is 9th once again, and Maloney scored well for Haas in 8th, with his teammate in 5th. In 4th with just 177 points, it's Gasly with just a single win. In 3rd, it's Lawson with 3 wins, thus leaving us with Ocon and Albon to fight for the title. But this one wasn't even close, as Ocon scored 0 wins, got 193 points, and lost out to Albon in the Ferrari by 41 points. Well done Albon, he's done it again. Considering his teammate is 15th, this was a pretty woeful year in the real championship for Albon, but he's taken home his 4th mid-title, so I have to congratulate him. As for the Constructors, it's the closest it's ever been, with 8th place McLaren having just 135 less points than winners Williams, and Sauber have moved up nicely to 6th place thanks to their equal driver pairing. But we have 1 more season left to transfer, so let's see how the grid looks for the final year. We start at Williams, where Lawson would be dropped after a few tough seasons, with his old rival Gasly replacing him there. This led Bortoleto to rejoin the grid with Aston Martin, and apart from Hadjar being replaced at VCarb by Richard Verschoor, that is all the moves for Season 9. Now, let's see who can take the final crown in Season 10. The Saubers have fallen back down in Season 10, and the points aren't as spread out this time around. Russell and Norris are still where they should be in the good cars, and we have a 9-10 for Haas, as they have finally found a good driver pairing. Behrman would score better this year with just a single win, and ignore Albon being ahead of Sainz. I don't know how that's happened. Last year's winner didn't even get a win this time around, so we've got a nice chance for a different winner. Tsunoda would somehow be in 4th for Mercedes with 5 wins and 12 podiums, and I don't know how that's happened considering 3rd place Ocon only got 2 wins and half of his podiums. This leaves us with Bortoleto and Gasly to fight it out for the title, but unfortunately it wouldn't be a close one as Gasly would take his 3rd title with a comfortable 38-point gap to Bortoleto. This reboot was amazing for Gasly and really hurt someone like Bortoleto, who was looking good before the revamp. Well, that was a pain in the ass to make, but a video that wasn't a pain in the ass to make was this one where I added icons to F1 25, and it's on screen right now for you to watch.